Okay, let's just dive right in. We're going to talk about something your brain does every single day that is, when you really think about it, basically a miracle: understanding language. We're going to break down the science of semantics, which is really just a fancy way of saying the study of how we build meaning. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Every day, you hear and understand sentences that have almost certainly never been spoken before in the entire history of the universe. So, how? How do you do that? How does your brain just instantly make sense of something completely brand new? I am willing to bet you have never heard that exact sentence before in your life, and yet you understood it instantly. You probably pictured the raccoon, the little bandana, the whole scene. That's because your brain isn't just some dusty old dictionary. It's an active, powerful meaning machine, and it's assembling new ideas on the fly all the time. To really get how this works, let's use a metaphor. Imagine your brain is a factory that manufactures meaning. It takes in raw materials, follows a set of blueprints, and then churns out a finished product, a fully understood idea. So let's take a little tour of this factory, starting with the raw materials on the assembly line. So what are the raw materials for our meaning factory? Well, words, of course. But where do we even keep them? And what is the meaning of a single word, really? It all starts with your brain's own personal inventory. We all have what linguists call a mental lexicon. The easiest way to think about it is like a huge personal dictionary in your head for every single word you know. It stores how a word sounds, how you use it, and most importantly, its meaning. We call that core internal concept of the word its sense. Okay, this seems easy, right? You could probably write a dictionary definition for cup, no problem. But let's actually test that idea. What really makes a cup a cup? Is it as simple as just a checklist of features? Well, this brings us to two different ways of thinking about meaning. The old checklist idea says an object has to tick certain boxes to be a cup. But that kind of falls apart when you see something that's halfway between a cup and a bowl, you know? The fuzzy prototype theory is a lot more realistic. It says we have a core idea, a prototypical cup in our heads, and other objects are just judged on how cuppy they are. This explains why some cups just feel more like a cup than others, and why it's totally fine to call a bowl a cup if you're drinking soup out of it. Our mental definitions are fuzzy, not rigid. All right, so we have our fuzzy, prototype-based words from our mental lexicon. That's our raw material. But, a pile of words isn't a sentence. We need the assembly instructions, the blueprint that tells our brain how to combine these parts into something that actually makes sense. And this right here is the absolute key to the whole process. It's called the principle of compositionality. All it means is that understanding a sentence isn't just about knowing the words. It's about understanding the structure, the syntax that puts them together. Dog bites man and man bites dog use the exact same words, but the structure, the blueprint, creates two completely different meanings. So how does this assembly actually work? Well, our brains don't just throw all these words in a blender. They follow a very precise step-by-step process. We combine the and raccoon into a single unit. Then we combine chase with that unit. We build up these phrases bit by bit, following the grammatical rules, until, boom, we have the final complete sentence. This systematic assembly line is what lets us build and understand a basically infinite number of sentences. Okay, so our factory has taken the words, it's followed the blueprint, and it's assembled a sentence. But what does this finished product actually do? What's its purpose? This is where our neatly constructed sentence meets the messy reality of the world outside our heads. So remember, we have the sense of a word. That's the meaning that lives inside our heads. For strawberry, that's the whole concept of something sweet and red and fruity. But that is only half the story. Because then you have denotation, which is what the word points to out in the actual world. The denotation of strawberry isn't the idea of a strawberry. It's the entire set of all the real strawberries that actually exist. So, to put it simply, sense is the concept in your head. Denotation is the connection to the real world. And this leads to a pretty wild idea. If a word like cat points to all the real cats in the world, what does a whole sentence like, "that cat is on the mat," point to? Well, it points to a situation in the world, and that situation is either happening or it isn't. In other words, a sentence's job is to make a claim about reality, and that claim can only point to one of two things: true or false. But hold on, we're not done yet. The meaning machine is even more sophisticated than just building literal, testable claims. It also produces these incredible hidden layers of meaning.
All the things we understand without them ever being explicitly said out loud. Take this super simple sentence. On the surface, it's just a straightforward description of an action. But think about what you automatically assume when you hear it. What does the sentence really mean to you?
Turns out there are two hidden layers of meaning going on here. The first is called an entailment, and that's a conclusion that is 100% rock solid guaranteed. If the customer sighed, it is logically impossible for them to have not emitted a breath. But the second layer is an implicator, and that's more like a strong suggestion, a really good guess, but it's not guarantee. We might infer the customer is angry, but we don't know that for sure. And here's the cool part. Here's the proof. You can easily cancel an implicator without it sounding weird. Saying the customer sighed, but she wasn't angry makes perfect sense. She could have been relieved or just tired. But now try to cancel the entailment. The customer sighed, but she didn't emit a breath. That's just nonsense, right? It's a flat-out contradiction. This little test shows us what's part of the core, guaranteed meaning, versus what's just a contextual hint. So, we've toured the whole factory. We've seen the fuzzy word parts, we've walked the structural assembly line, and we've inspected the final product with all its hidden layers. And all of this leads to one really clear conclusion about where meaning actually comes from.
I mean, when you really think about it, a paper dictionary can't possibly capture all of this complexity. It can't show you the fuzzy prototype meaning of a word like cup. It completely misses all the hidden implicators that change with context. And it can't ever keep up when we create new meanings on the spot, like saying, the museum said something, as if a building can talk. A dictionary is just a snapshot. It's not the living thing. And this quote from James Murray, one of the original editors of the Oxford English Dictionary, just says it all. Even the people who literally write the dictionaries know that language isn't some fixed, dead thing you can pin down in a book. It's a living system, and it's constantly being shaped and created by all of us who use it. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. Dictionaries don't create meaning. They just try their best to keep a record of it. The real meaning makers, the operators of that incredible factory inside all of our heads, that's us, every single day. So the real question is, what new meanings are you building right now?